Hi everyone. My name is that's echoing a bit, isn't it? My name is Sam Watches Social. I'm joined today by Polina Changuleva. Polina is the founder of Same But Different Consultancy. She has an insane amount of titles. I'm going to reel off right now. She is part of the 50/50 Parliament Diversity Committee. She is on the advisory board for OK Mentors Diversity and is a very, very busy lady. So, Paula, do you want to just tell us a little bit about what it is you do? And
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Sam. So Sam already touched on some of it, so I'm going to try to not repeat that. But I'm Polina Changuleva. I'm an award-winning diversity, equity, and inclusion expert and the founder of Same But Different. So at Same But Different, we work with the brands of tomorrow to create a world in which we embrace each other's differences and we celebrate our similarities. So very diversity and inclusion focused. Prior to that, I spent the last 10 years working in media and tech for various companies, most recently Xbox Advertising, where I was doing their global media strategy across 60 markets, and also leading the Women's Inclusion Network at Yahoo. So very, very exciting. I've also worked as a cultural advisor and racial justice advocate, a few different brands. In the past. So definitely keeping busy. I do also have a podcast called Tap Into Extraordinary. So there's a lot going on, as you can hear, but more or less very much focused around how do we create spaces that allow people to tap into their version of extraordinary, and how do we do that in various capacities.
I love that. I love that you are focusing on highlighting everyone's extraordinariness. It's brilliant, amazing. So I'm going to go back to the start a little bit here then. So you started out at some of the biggest tech companies, Xbox, Yahoo. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you built your own personal brand up through working through those businesses and any sort of challenges you found along the way?
Sure. I mean, as you said, they're big names and they're very recognizable names. So while that is a very exciting opportunity that allows you to grow your CV and to obviously be aligned with one of those brands forever for the rest of your life, you have that on your CV. I think at the same time, what many people don't realize is that because they're so big, there's a lot of limitations as to like what individuals can do within those businesses when it comes to building your individual personal brand, unless you are at the VP, CEO / managing director level. So I think you have to get creative, and it's something that even prior to joining Xbox and Yahoo, I've had to always think about. And actually, even in preparation for today, the whole time I've known there was some intentionality in my personal brand because of I've always had the reason of like, why are you online? What are you trying to communicate? There's always been a reason behind my presence, aka my brand. However, I don't think I realized how much intentionality there was going into it until I prepared for today. And then I was
Okay.
like, oh, this has been in the works for a while. So I think a few things I would say is just identify why do you want a personal brand in the first place. Is it just because you want to be, I don't know, stroke your ego? Because there's people who do that for like why do you want a personal brand for? I know that personally for me it was very much of I want to be known as the person who creates amazing collaborations, and I also want to create spaces where everyone feels like they belong and they feel included, spaces where everyone feels like they could tap into their version of extraordinary. And also very much around the servitude attitudes of like, how can I help others with everything I know, everything I am? How can I help others by being myself and also putting myself forward? And I think at the start it started off very much of I have to speak on behalf of others to like create representation in certain rooms. Being a women's inclusion network lead as well, I had to speak on behalf of like hundreds of women sometimes. So you kind of have to, it started off as like, okay, I'm speaking on behalf of others, and then as even through my business, then later on, now that I work for myself, it just very much became a how does me showing up online today help others? Can it create an impact? So for me, it's always been very much impact driven. What's the impact of me showing up? How am I helping others by coming online today, or even just in person. Like personal brand doesn't just stop online. So I think it's just being very proactive and mindful, and not necessarily just thinking of, this is my day job and that's the only thing I'm known for. You're so much more than your day job. Like as you've just read my 20 titles supposedly, like only
Yeah.
one of those is technically my day job, which is founder and director of my consultancy. Everything else is not my day job. They're passion projects, but they're still things that I want to be known for. And I think you just have to identify, why do you want a personal brand in the first place, and then just create the steps that will get you there. So put yourself in the right places, position yourself in the right way. So I knew with the Women's Inclusion Network, for example, with Yahoo and Xbox, first of all, when I joined the company, I realized how big the business is. Yahoo is absolutely immense.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, one, get to know as many people as possible. Two, I did also want to be known. I didn't want to be just another person in the business. So I realized that, like, I've always believed that your network is your net worth. So I knew that in order to do that, I need to position myself and I need to be visible. I can't just sit on the sidelines. So I got involved in everything there was to do, that would not only allow me to tap into my passions, so things like diversity and inclusion, culture, any other additional gaming and tech related projects. Not only that, but then one year allows me to tap into my passions. But then, as a secondary side effect, shall I say, he also allowed me into rooms with leadership where the rest of my team wasn't able to be in. And it was purely because I was going the extra mile of like being intentional and getting in those rooms.
Okay. Yeah, that's incredible. And there's a few things I want to pick up on there. So the first one, you said your network is your net worth. Now, I first met you through the Stack World, which
Yes.
is a networking app and like just powerhouse of amazing women who all come together and host events and help each other out. How important has sort of external networks and finding sort of different networks outside of your main job been in terms of your career?
Important, but I do think that even in your job, especially if you work for a big company, think outside of your team. So many people just stay within their teams and network in their teams. And I saw that, like, with so many of the companies that I have worked in, I have been the one who goes beyond our team and goes beyond just our immediate department. And you would not believe the opportunities and conversations that will come up if you just branched out. So I think even external networks. So when I was doing the transition from full-time employment to being a full-time entrepreneur, like, I knew that that was the one thing I was missing. And again, I was very intentional of, I need those connections. I need, first of all, a room full of other people who can relate to my experiences on a human, like, simple level. However, at the same time, I think it's absolutely massive because we don't operate in silos. What you do doesn't just stop at your company. And also everything that you do, bringing it back to the impact side of it, everything that you do impacts your family, your friends, the wider society, hopefully. I don't know what your job is, but like for the people that are obviously watching this, but you have to think beyond just yourself and your immediate circle. So then if you want to make a difference, if you want to be exceptional, if you want to be the best in what you do, then you need to reach beyond just your immediate circle, at work or in personal spaces as well.
Yeah, I've always found the places where I've made the biggest impact are the places where people don't really expect me to be or where I'm supposed to be showing up. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm a big fan of turning up in different places where you're not supposed to be and seeing what happens there. Um,
I've met so many amazing connections at like the most random places, and I truly believe you can never have too many connections. That
yeah,
you obviously will not be best friends with each one of them, but you can never know too many people because, yeah, as I said, I wanted to be known as that person who connects people, ideas, and collaborates. And if you are going to collaborate to create something great or to change the world, then you need people on the journey. You can't do it on your own.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And like another thing you said a few minutes ago, like growing your personal brand shouldn't be about your ego, should it? It's about the impact you want to make for others and how you want to help them. And I think once you kind of get that into your head, that your personal brand isn't about you, it's about how you can service, how you can provide service and like give, basically, isn't it? And once you've kind of got that giving mentality, I think everything kind of falls into place then, doesn't it?
Definitely. And you know that question where people always ask, so I did another talk yesterday and someone asked me like, how do you get comfortable? How do you get outside of your comfort zone to public speak or to put yourself on social media, to write content pieces on LinkedIn? And I've always said like, I'm not doing it for me. So like the moment I detach it that, oh, if I don't get likes or comments or shares, it doesn't affect my ego or my self-worth. I'm doing it to help someone. So if it didn't help someone, okay, now I know what doesn't work. However, if it did, on the contrary, I have helped however many people, even if it's just made them think and made them pause in their day. So I think it's like the moment you attach that, it also makes it easier to put yourself out there because it's no longer about you, it's about the impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. So let's talk about Same But Different Consultancy. When did you realize it was time to step out on your own? What was like the driving factor for you setting that up?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think it's been in the works for a while. First of all, I was born in a family of self-made entrepreneurs. So I think I always knew that entrepreneurship is the way that I would end up one day in my career. So it was literally a ticking time bomb, if we can call it that, where I knew at some point I would be an entrepreneur and work for myself. And then my whole passion and interest in diversity and inclusion specifically, and pretty much like how maybe the beginnings of Same But Different started, was around 4 or 5 years ago. It started off with simple things like me joining women-focused leadership programs at Thomas Cook when I was there, and then seeing the impact that that had on me as a leader, and then how it allowed me to accelerate in my career through mentorship and sponsorship and so on. So it's just one experiencing that, but also then going to somewhere like Yahoo and Xbox, who were doing diversity and inclusion before it became trendy. They have been doing diversity and inclusion for many, many years. So I remember joining the business and being highly impressed with like their diversity and inclusion infrastructure, and just really getting stuck in to various projects, from our racial justice committee team to the culture force team, which is basically our culture team that shapes the culture of the company, to the women's inclusion network. And the more I got involved in it, the more I realized how passionate I am about it. And then in retrospection last year, as I was reevaluating like where I am in my career and where do I see myself next, I used to have a coach at the time. And I remember talking to my coach about thinking like, I think it's time to start at least laying the foundations of that business while still working at Yahoo. And we did this whole exercises of what are you expert in, what are you passionate about, and I remember me thinking about diversity and inclusion at the time. And it's really funny because a few months prior to that, I had already won an award for diversity and inclusion, which was not my main role in Yahoo. So it's really funny that when we got to that conversation a few months later, I was still like, oh, I don't know. I mean, I love it. I would do it tomorrow. If I could wake up tomorrow and do something all day, every day, it would be this, because like it really gets me going. I'm really passionate about creating a better world for the next generations, and even for the current generation. It doesn't have to be the next generation. But, yeah, and I remember thinking about that and then really reflecting on my experiences, that in the 10 years that I have been in the UK, I have worked across media and tech predominantly. And across both of those industries, I mostly found myself in teams where I was the only woman on the team. And also, I think being so involved in diversity and inclusion made me aware of two things. One, my privilege as a white cisgender woman. I come with certain privileges in this world, and I have always been very intentional about, if you're not happy about something, be the change that you want to see in the world. And I definitely wasn't feeling happy about the state of the world, especially in the last few years. So I was like, okay, how can I use that privilege for good? But then also acknowledging that I have experienced a lot of those things that people share on round tables or safe spaces as a minority ethnic in the UK. So I'm originally Bulgarian, and although I've been in the UK for 13 years, there's been many times where people didn't bother to learn my name, even when I was there for 2 years, or many times where I was the only woman in the room, and there were certain inappropriate conversations happening that shouldn't be happening. So I obviously can't say I've experienced marginalization the same way that many other people have, but I was like, okay, how can I use the combination of I have some minority ethnic experiences, being one, to how can I use my privilege for good? And last but not least, it just made me realize how can I be the change that I want to see in the world? Because I have been in media and tech for 10 years. And despite the fact that I have worked for companies that would be considered diversity, equity, and inclusion champions, there was still such a huge way to go between where we are now and the aspirational, inclusive future that we all talk about. And it was like, okay, how can I actually spend my time doing something meaningful and being that change? So this is how like Same But Different was pretty much born last year. And then earlier this year decided that it's time to step away from Yahoo. And actually I remember a friend of mine saying, you would know when the time is right. And it was actually someone else that we met through the Stack World. And I remember talking to them last year about like, how do you know when to take that leap of faith from like full-time employment to working for yourself? And they were like, something will happen and you would know. And that something literally happened in January. So Yahoo was going through restructure and our team was being reshuffled. And one of my roles was subject to like voluntary redundancy. And I was like, actually, this is it. This is everything. Like, I already had the business plan. I had everything ready to go. And I was like, the business was even registered. So I was fully ready to go.
Prepared. Love it.
Yeah. Then I was like, I think this is the sign. I think this is the moment to take the leap of faith. And I've honestly never felt so close to the edge as I did at that time, where I was like, I think I'm here. I think I'm ready to jump.
That's crazy and brilliant. And yeah, I think if you ask most entrepreneurs sort of a couple of years in, like, was it the right time? Did you know it was going to happen then? And you look back at all your past experiences and things like that, and you can't ever imagine like the places you're going to end up in like 5 years time or whatever. But if you look back, everything was a stepping stone towards that moment, and everything falls into place at the right time. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of people with stories very similar to yours where you had that leap of faith and you did it, you went for it, and like everything's just worked out brilliantly.
Yeah.
So
there's
yeah,
a saying that I really, really like, and every time I say it, people obsess over it. But I think it's because it's so relevant to everyone's lives, and it's that you can always connect the dots backwards, but you can never connect them forwards. And it's like 100% true, because looking back now, I'm sure, and even my experience that brought me to this, like working in media, tech, brand partnerships, having had like sales experience, marketing experience, I'm like, all of this is literally the perfect blend of skills that I need to make my business work now. And I'm sure like most entrepreneurs would agree, like depending on what their business is, would be like, actually, yes, this was all like works out perfectly, like a magic potion literally comes together.
I love it. Yeah, I'm definitely stealing that quote as well. That's perfect. So with Same But Different Consultancy, what is it that you do with different businesses to help them with their sort of diversity and inclusion goals that they're trying to hit?
Yeah. So it's Same But Different is a full end-to-end diversity and inclusion consultancy. So we work with the brands of tomorrow, as I said, and we're very strict about like, are there brands that they do want to align with those values of creating a world in which we embrace each other's differences and we celebrate our similarities. The reason being is because I do strongly believe that at the core of it, we all have so much shared experiences as humans. If you just connect it with someone on a human level, ignore everything that's different about them, and just speak to them as another human, so equal playing field, there's so many things that you'll find in common. At the same time, what makes me Polina and what makes you Sam is unique and is different. And it should be that. It shouldn't have to merge into one, because that is literally your secret sauce. That's what makes you you and makes you special. And I wouldn't want to be Sam, just like I'm sure you don't want to be Polina. So
Sure.
and I think it's so important to keep that uniqueness at the same time. So when we work with brands, we meet them where they are in their diversity and inclusion journey, because everyone's in a different stage. And that could look in various forms. So you could be working with them to identify areas to focus their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So creating that initial diversity strategy and really getting going on the journey, to then, once they have created that and they know what they need to do, working with them on awareness and training and workshops or whatever it may be, to really raise that awareness of why those efforts matter. Because I do strongly believe that any diversity and inclusion strategy will fall flat unless people understand why they need to buy into it, why they should change. People are naturally resistant to change. And if you just created a strategy and went straight to execution and you skip the awareness and education stage, everyone in the company will be like, wait, why do I now need to interview 5 minority candidates? Wait, why do I now need to review my procurement list and include minority-led businesses? Like, people need to buy into the process to make a success, for you to make a success out of it. And last but not least is working with companies like Yahoo, for example, who's like very advanced on their journey, and then supporting them as additional sounding board or additional resource on projects that they may be running in that space, including brand partnerships in diversity and inclusion.
Okay, that's a lot there. So much stuff. I love it. So, I mean, I think with diversity and inclusion at the minute, it's a very, very hot topic. And I think there's a lot of companies that say that they are becoming more diverse or they're becoming more inclusive, but actually they're just saying it and they're not actually doing things. So what would your top tips be for someone that's in a company where they feel like their voice isn't being heard?
Look around the room. Can you see people like yourself? If you can't see people looking like yourself, that would be an obvious reason why your voice is not being heard, because they're not used to it. If everyone else looks exactly the same and you're the odd one in the room, they're not likely to listen to you. However, that doesn't mean that you should leave tomorrow. Obviously, I would always encourage people to question it, be that change maker, because it's on all of us. It doesn't have to just be. I do think allies have a huge part to play in it. However, it needs to start from somewhere. So question why. Try to own up and take up space. Do not doubt yourself down just because they didn't hear you the first time or the second time. Like, address it head on. I'm a very direct person naturally, so I would always say, ask the question, why was your suggestion not taken on board? Did the person repeat the same thing you just said and they just ignored you the first time you suggested the idea? Like, I would really like ask questions, and then once you have identified like whether this is something that they're willing to change, whether that's conversations with your manager, with the leadership, with the team of, hey, we should do this differently, or I don't feel like my voice is being heard. I don't think you're using me to the best of my abilities. You hired me for a reason. And unless it's just to tick the diversity box, then you need me to like actually advance this company. And it also makes them look good. If you do good, it makes your leadership team do well. So it's in their interest to support you as well. But if they are not willing to, I would say I would not be the last person to say leave. Because I think I would encourage people in the first instance to engage internally and ask questions and really probe and challenge things, challenge the status quo. But I do think, and of course, approach that with kindness and grace, because I think this is where a lot of conflict happens, is where both sides come to the table ready to argue and ready to like set the world on fire. And I think both sides need to bring grace and kindness. And it might be, playing the devil's advocate, that they've never even realized that they're exclusive. It might be that they've never even had they've never even like learned how to hear different points of view. Because like, it's something that an old mentor of mine once said, and he was like, they may not even like, maybe they've never been invested or taught how to develop talent. So like, maybe no one invested in them and like really bringing them up and giving them a platform, so then they don't know how to do that for others. So that's why I say, like, approach conversations with grace and kindness. But if you do see that the business is not investor, I'm not going to tell you to stay there and get traumatized every day and feel like you need to dial yourself down, because that's what happens over time. And businesses that are being exclusive on purpose or without even realizing it are losing out on talent, and they are, as a result, losing out on revenue and innovation and creativity. So at some point they will need to look inwards and reflect, and they'll be able to see that the point that you made was valid, but it may be too late to keep you.
Those are all such interesting points, and like there's so much to take away there for sure. And I think like you said, dealing with things with kindness and grace, like things do get heated sometimes, do they? But yeah, I think so long as you're diplomatic and come from a good place and want to genuinely make a change, then everything's cool. So okay, so obviously it's a huge topic, lots and lots and lots to delve into, but we haven't got long left. So what would be sort of your three main things, say, for companies to consider when they start delving into their diversity and inclusion policies, and sort of ways that they can make things more, I guess, inclusive for their employees? What are the top three, or what are the main three issues you see coming up when you start working with a company, maybe?
Great question. Do you want me to answer the question of what are the three things that I see are like issues?
Yeah, let's go with that one.
Because they're different questions, but they're all great questions. I think one is fear of getting it wrong. A lot of companies are just stuck or standing still because they're scared of getting it wrong or saying the wrong thing. And I think the issue starts from the top very often, because a lot of leadership teams look exactly the same. They did pre-2020, pre-2015, and they haven't necessarily caught up with the changes just yet. However, the rest of the company may already be diverse. So that leadership team that has stayed the same, even if the rest of the company is not diverse, that leadership team has stayed the same, even as society changed and even as the world around us is changing. So I think very often they know that they need to change, but because they're not from diverse backgrounds or underrepresented communities themselves, they don't know where to start. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. And obviously, at leadership level, there's so much scrutiny, rightly so, and accountability that comes with what you say and what you do and how you're representing the company, how you're leading the company. So I think a lot of them feel like they are under a microscope. They're being viewed under a microscope. So there's a lot of like action paralysis of, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to say, so I'm not going to say anything instead. And it's literally the worst thing that you could do. Anything is better than nothing. I always say that to companies. Even if you get it wrong, we would rather you do something than pretend it's not happening. Imagine working for a company, for example, that would not acknowledge George Floyd. Like, that would be absolutely bizarre, because it would literally be like, the world around us is on fire. What do you mean? You don't see it. So I think that's one really common one. Another one that I see is diversity without inclusion doesn't work. There's a reason why there's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think they're all very different, and companies very often focus on one or the other. You can hire all the diverse talent that you want. You can diversify your partners, your suppliers, your procurement, like your providers. However, unless you make them feel welcome and you give them that sense of belonging and inclusion, they're going to leave. And so, like, one without the other doesn't work. And I would always say you need to be working on both simultaneously. You can't just focus on diversity efforts and then think about culture later. Equally, you can't only focus on culture if there's very few people of minorities internally, because they would feel like they're still not seen. So you still need to be working on representation at the same time. So that's another one. And last but not least is, there's a lot of talk and not enough action. And a lot of companies, I think, just create these silo diversity and inclusion teams. But I think where they get it wrong is diversity and inclusion needs to be part of absolutely everything you do in the company. So every time you've heard me talk about it today, I've mentioned and procurement and hiring and marketing and sales. It needs to be part of every single function you have. And that's the only way that you truly do diversity and inclusion and really create those equitable opportunities for people. Because it needs to be at the core of everything you do for it to be truly authentic and stick over time as well. And I think very often they just create a function of diversity and inclusion that's supposed to change everything, and it's not possible because every team, it should be part of every team's objectives and targets and strategy. So I think very often that's one thing that lacks. Businesses don't make it the heart and core of that strategy, because at the end of the day, I don't know what your business is, but most businesses work with people and humans, even if that's your client, even if that's the person who you're delivering the software to at the end of the line. So you need to think of, if you put diversity, equity, inclusion at the heart of it, you're putting humans at the heart of it, and you can never get that wrong. That could never go wrong.
I love that. Humans at the heart of it. Okay, so we're coming to the end of it now. So, Paulina, if people wanted to find out more about you or work together with you, how can they do that?
Sure. So LinkedIn, we're obviously on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on LinkedIn through my profile. So Polina Changuleva, or Same But Different Consultancy, also on LinkedIn. So feel free to message on any of those two accounts. Alternatively, you can message me at Polina, so Polina, at sbd-consultancy.com, which is my email, and that will come directly to me.
Amazing. Paulina, thank you so much for joining me today. I've got so many things to take away from this, and I think it's been really valuable. Yeah, thank you so much. And if you want to get in touch with Paulina, please do, because she's brilliant.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Thank
No
you.
worries. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.